There is only one city in the world which has an irresistible charm, whatever the season. Come sun, rain or snow, Venice is always worth a visit. Let's float along the canals and you can discover with me the secret delights hidden behind the imposing facades of the Venetian palaces.
To begin with, discovering Venice involves learning not to be bothered by the absence of cars, traffic, right angles and even punctuality, or the lack of it. There are more important things to concentrate on in this maze on stilts. Let's not be carried along by the stream, but instead find out for ourselves the hidden beauty of this delightful city on water, which Thomas Mann loved so much. Caught up in a deep dream, rocked to sleep by death, time has stopped to slumber here, and life seems so far away. We enter the Venetian palace owned by silk baron Alessandro Favoretto Rubelli. His company headquarters are located in a magnificent marble palace on the Grand Canal. Some of the finest fabrics in the world originate here. High-quality silk damask, cotton, velour and brocade. 60 looms produce around 700,000 meters of material a year, and the retail price is about $70 to $300 per meter. Those people who attach great importance to the Rubelli fabrics being hand-woven will pay up to $3,000.
You are one of the oldest and most traditional manufacturers of home fabrics in the world. How has it been possible to uphold traditional craft for so many centuries?
Venice has always been important for the textile industry, until this day has remained a point where East meets West. There used to be weavers' looms to be found all over the city. And as I said, it was Venice's most important industry, and the reason why the city became rich at all. And Rubelli, my family, has been in the textile business since 1630. And after the war, Rubelli expanded, and now our fabrics are exported worldwide. And I enjoy the work tremendously.
And are your fabrics still made using the traditional methods?
To an extent, yes. Some fabrics are produced using the old methods on a loom, but the number is limited. We do it sometimes for museums and castles, for example in Germany, especially in Munich for Nymphenburg Castle, or Schleißheim Castle, or the Residence. But such fabrics are also selected by discerning customers around the world. The luxurious Rubelli fabrics are available in most European home furnishing stores, where you'll definitely find enough material to be able to brighten up your own home with some silk brocade. Our next palace, the Palazzetto Pisani, boasts an extensive collection of antiques. The heiress of one of Venice's most well-known aristocratic families, Countess Pisani, now administers the properties of her ancestors who bought the palace 250 years ago from Duke Pollini, who was a leading figure in Venice in the 18th century. Recently, the American Lawrence Lovett stayed in the Pisani Palace. He is president of an extremely committed and ambitious organization which has been set up to try and save Venice from the sea. Countess Pisani is the top hostess in Venice. Her afternoon tea is a favorite rendezvous for members of Venice's high society.
I inherited the palazzo from an uncle of my husband who died in the war. And the uncle was the last one of the Pisani family. And the story of the palazzo is that it was built later than the big one. We have three centuries in the same little. The big dining room is joined with the big palace. Then you go down some steps and you join the 18th century building. And you reach at the end the 16th century part of the palace with different windows, but the beautiful view of the Grand Canal. Finally, you reach the Grand Canal.
Everybody loves this city on water, with its touching melancholy and numerous churches and decaying palaces. There are 480 gondolas in Venice, definitely one of the most romantic ways to see the city. Nathalie treats herself to a gondola trip and allows herself to be punted across the waters from St. Mark's Square. Venice has survived the ravages of time and maintained its legendary character. Over 100 townhouses bear witness to the city's turbulent past. The decaying walls of these houses also guard the secrets of Venice's traditional cuisine, which is famous around the world. We set off in our gondola on a gourmet trip which starts near the market halls. Here we meet the young generation of Venice's most traditional gastronomes. Arrigo Cipriani is the most well-known, at the same time the city's biggest employer. On Giudecca Island, we find him in his pasta factory. These golden yellow noodles are now to be found in all the best Italian restaurants around the world. In addition, this enterprising businessman also opened the dessert bar Harry's Dolci in 1983. It's not surprising if the name Harry seems familiar to you, since Arrigo has been true to the Cipriani tradition. The world-famous Harry's Bar was opened in 1931 by Arrigo's father, Giuseppe Cipriani, a former waiter. And, as Arrigo admits himself, his father's legendary reputation is something he still has trouble competing with when pursuing his own business in Venice. For 50 years, Giuseppe was the crown prince of the culinary scene in Italy. Today it's his son Arrigo who disappears behind the iron door of the former ropemaker's shop. It's here in the legendary Harry's Bar, where Hemingway used to wash his lobster down with whiskey, that the famous Bellini cocktails came into being. This drink, which consists of peach juice and sparkling wine, appears in Arrigo Cipriani's recipe books.
In 1928, anyway, in the summer, he was the bartender of the Europa Hotel here in Venice. And among his customers, he had a young American who was a very, very good customer of the bar, and who suddenly one day stopped drinking. So my father was worried, and he said the name of this young gentleman was Harry Pickering, and he came from Boston. So my father inquired why he had stopped drinking. And he discovered that Mr. Pickering had finished all his money. And so my father, who was a man never attached to money, really, he offered to pay for his hotel bill and also for the ticket to take him back to the United States. And so he did. And for 2 years he never heard from Mr. Pickering. But in 1930, Mr. Pickering came back to the bar of my father with the money that my father had given him, and with more money to open a bar. And they decided to name it after Mr. Pickering, Harry Pickering. Anyway, he did Harry's Bar, and then he did, second, he did Locanda Cipriani in Torcello, which is what we call an inn. It's a very small hotel. There's only 5 rooms. And over there we had Ernest Hemingway, who stayed there. We kept it open on the whole winter of 1949 because Ernest Hemingway wanted to stay there to go hunting, duck hunting. And And then we had Orson Welles, we had Winston Churchill, we had and finally we had the Queen Elizabeth of England, who came there for the first time as a private in a restaurant.
Of course, in the Locanda we had, I think, especially in the past, very famous people, almost famous actors, Charlie Chaplin. Recently we had Paul Newman, and I mean the latest star of Hollywood. The thing that, as far as I can remember, fascinated me most was his simplicity. He was a very natural man, and I think that the people loved him because he made the people feel him relaxed.
Besides the white carpaccio sauce, Giuseppe Cipriani thought up many other Italian dishes and cocktails here on Torcello Island. Surrounded by fields of vegetables, churches and bridges, the tiny island is about an hour's boat trip from Venice. Torcello, far from the well-trodden tourist paths and its existence almost forgotten, is an insider tip for discerning travellers. All good things come in threes, as the saying goes, so old Giuseppe fulfilled one last wish.
And then, in 1958, he built the Hotel Cipriani on the Giudecca. Giudecca was a place where nobody would have dreamt to open a hotel, because it was an abandoned island. You see, the view there is wonderful. And then, so he did fulfill all his dreams.
As one of the leading hotels of the world, the Cipriani has been regarded as Venice's top hotel for many years. The noble residence is an elegant palace and comfortable English club all rolled into one, with open fireplace, accessories of Murano glass, elegant salons and several verandas. Although the hotel is no longer in the possession of the famous Cipriani restaurant-owning family, managing director Nathalie Rusconi continues to run it exactly as its former owners would have wished. Each of the 100 rooms is fitted out with fabulous Venetian furniture and magnificent marble baths. The Grand Hotel has also converted the late Gothic building next door into a luxury hotel residence. The Palazzo Vendrami, dating from the 15th century, fitted with exclusive apartments, is more reminiscent of an elegant villa and is ideal for honeymooners. All of the living quarters, with a magnificent view of the Bay of San Marco, consist of stylish junior suites with 1 or 2 bedrooms. The bathrooms, which all have expensive marble finishing, even have bathtubs with underwater massage. The individual butler service, access to all the facilities at the Hotel Cipriani, and the astounding view of St. Mark's Square turn each stay into an unforgettable experience. We continue our trip along the canals, this time though in a water taxi, to meet a German countess who lives in Venice.
Travelling by boat is much nicer than sitting in a car. Otherwise, you can do everything else on foot in Venice. There are no big streets here, just little passages and bridges, so nothing is really very far. There are connecting streets all through Venice, and once you know your way around a bit and have a map, it's very easy. This is particularly interesting from the cultural point of view, because even after 10 or 20 years, you can still discover new places. Although my husband was born here, he takes his camera out every Sunday morning to go through Venice and to take photos of details.
For those people only staying a few days in Venice, what would you recommend?
Well, that naturally depends how much culture they're after. What you could call the typical tourist naturally goes to St. Mark's Square first and looks at the Doge's Palace and then on to St. Mark's Church. Whereas a more sophisticated tourist will go to the galleries and museums and then also just go for a walk. And then they discover areas that I suppose even some of the people who live in Venice won't know. Now, what would I recommend such a tourist? I suppose I'd recommend for them to go for a long walk.
Omnipresent, the Venetian mask, foreign and mysterious. The Carnival in Venice is famous, yet it's not only during the silly season that the inhabitants of Venice love masquerade. The Venetians all have two sides to their characters, wrote Voltaire. When wearing a mask, one has a vague feeling that one is moving between the different personalities. Like millions of other people, Nathalie also wants to discover the secret spots, all those places just waiting to be visited. Magnificent yet a little unnerving at the same time, Venice looms around us, and we're just extras in a play where the stage is decorated with palace facades. Only those who manage to glimpse behind the scenes will really be able to understand this Venetian play. Anybody wishing to experience the melancholic charm of Venice's carnival firsthand should visit in mid-February, because it's during the lagoon's spring fog that the Venetians celebrate. They wander along, laughing and talking, spreading their cloaks like eagles their wings. Gay voices tinkling, high spirits hovering. And in the crimson light, voices hail, laughter rings and eyes are all afire. The day may be over, but beauty still wins. Here in a place where every yearning is inspired and where the world's most joyful frenzy sings in Venice's masked attire.
International auctions are not just an exciting show for curious spectators. Their main objective is to provide collectors with an opportunity to acquire top-quality antiques at attractive prices.
When objets d'art come under the hammer, the identity of the buyer is not always revealed. Nathalie took a look behind the scenes and visited Marquartstein Castle in Chiemgau. Anybody who comes here for the first time will initially wonder if they're dreaming, because each room is like a treasure trove, full of the most magnificent antiques. Valuable sculptures, furniture, pictures and a unique collection of rare tapestries provide a lesson in art history. Even if appearances would seem to support it, we're not in a museum, but in fact in an extraordinary private residence. Marquartstein Castle was built in 1070 by Count Marquartstein II of Hohenstein. Today, it's owned by the famous Bernheimer family, one of the most respected art dealer dynasties in Europe. 130 years ago, it was Lehmann Bernheimer who decorated the castles of King Ludwig II. His great-grandson, Konrad Bernheimer, is now head of the family business in the fourth generation. We're listening to the favourite songs of the great Enrico Caruso. Bernheimer has a superb collection of rare shellac records and a 1905 gramophone. Once the art bug has got a hold of you, it won't let go. There are naturally areas which are related to art because they have things in common and because they're also one of life's pleasures. Great food and wine, for example. Wine has always been a favourite occupation of mine, especially Bordeaux wines.
And a good cigar.
Sometimes, but I'm trying to give up. But it is fun, and as I said, working with Bordeaux wines, with mature or old vintages, has always had something to do with art.
You are an art lover and art collector, and you also advise wealthy people about art. What are the characteristics of a good art consultant?
Well, I wouldn't actually call myself an art consultant, but an art dealer. I think the main difference between an art consultant and an art dealer is that the art dealer really invests his own capital and has actually bought the objects himself that he subsequently offers his customers. I feel that this is an important distinction, which is also an important part of the art dealer's success. I've experienced this time and time again. If one doesn't own the object oneself and hasn't bought the object beforehand, like a collector, then it's not as easy to spark the customer's interest.
Dann kann auch der Funke dann auf den Sammler nicht so überspringen. Ich glaube, das ist ganz wesentlich.
And what would you say is still missing in the art world? What are the future trends?
Darüber habe ich mir, glaube ich, noch keine Gedanken gemacht.
Well, I haven't actually given that much thought, because as an art dealer and collector, I tend to concentrate on the past. I find the art of the 16th, 17th and 18th centuries so fascinating that the time I spend involved with this period, its history and the people of that time, keeps me so tied up that I don't actually have much time to think about contemporary art or future trends.
Auf zeitgenössisches oder zukünftiges in der Kunst eigentlich noch nicht viel nachgedacht habe.
Don't you find it a real luxury to live in a castle?
Vielleicht ja. Aber wenn man
Yes, perhaps, but once you have it, you no longer perceive it as such. But I think it's the same with every luxury. Once you're used to it, then after a while you no longer regard it as one.
nach einer Zeit nicht mehr als Luxus.
How did you come to own this chateau? What interested you most about it, and what is the history of the castle?
Die Burg stammt aus dem 11.
Well, the castle dates from the 11th century and is one of the few and nicest examples of early castle building in southern Bavaria.
Burgenarchitektur in Südbayern.
There's a particular tie for me because I grew up here in the village. And when I was later able to buy the castle, I found myself back in the place I used to carry out my childhood pranks. The castle owner has already gone to great effort to reunite 120 pieces of the Pompadour service, an exquisite Chinese porcelain dating from 1750, which had previously been separated and scattered all over the world. The oyster eater over the mantelpiece is Bernheimer's favourite painting. By Henri Strezor, the painting portrays a castle page enjoying a couple of his master's oysters while he's out of the room. Another angle in the dining room, Chinese tapestry from a Soho manufacturer in London at the end of the 17th century. In the music room, furnished with Italian antiques, Nathalie discovers something really extraordinary. A pair of large shell pictures, painstakingly prepared with layer after layer of mother-of-pearl and pink shells. We don't really know where these shell pictures originated. The art historians are still arguing about whether they came from Naples or Potsdam. We do agree about the time, 1760 to 1765. You can see that from the type of clothing. Otherwise, it appears to be the only one of its kind. There's nothing comparable. It was Konrad Bernheimer's great-grandfather who gave his name to Munich's Bernheimer Palace in Lenbach Square, The once world-famous Bavarian palace was regarded as one of the leading furnishing and antique establishments in Europe in the last century, although in 1864, when the Bernheimer family started the business, it was very modest. The founder, Lehmann Bernheimer, started out with textiles, and it was only after a certain time that he added home furnishing fabrics. And one day he decided to give up clothing fabrics completely and became a decorator and then a furnisher. And gradually he began to deal in furniture, antique objets d'art, Chinese art, and suddenly he was dealing in antiques and carpets. And when my turn came along, I made another cut, and I gave up the furnishing and decorating side of things because I just wanted to work as an art dealer.
Und heute nur noch als Kunsthändler tätig bin.
French furniture, Chinese art and old masters are Konrad Bernheimer's main interest, and he has customers all over the world. So that he could continue to concentrate in this area, he recently parted with a large part of the valuable carpet and fabric collection which he'd inherited. These were auctioned in London at Christie's. This was a welcome highlight for art aficionados and antique lovers, who immediately realized that this wasn't just any old sale. The collection to be auctioned had belonged to an art expert and would normally be worth a small fortune. But here everyone hoped for a bargain. I must admit that I'd never admired my collection as much until it was at the auction. Of course, there was a temptation to say, oh goodness, it took me such a long time to decide whether to sell these carpets. Shouldn't I keep one or two of them? Naturally, I actually had kept a couple back anyway, because I liked to surround myself with beautiful objects and didn't want to give them up. However, I believe one does far more justice to the importance of this collection by giving another generation of collectors the opportunity to acquire these treasures. The Bernheimer auction was, as expected, a great success. The auction made several £1 million. It was, according to Christie's, one of the largest and most spectacular collections of carpets of the last 50 years.